The moment you feel guilt rise in your chest because of someone else's words, something dangerous has already happened, not to them, to you. In that exact moment, you handed over the keys to your inner world. You allowed another person to sit in the judge's chair of your worth, your choices, your identity. And most people don't even feel the handoff. They call it conscience. They call it being mature. They call it being a good person. But strip away the comforting language, and what remains is simple: submission. Think about it. You wake up, go about your day, and somewhere along the way, a comment lands. A look, a joke disguised as concern, a sentence wrapped in morality. And hours later, you're still carrying it, replaying it, defending yourself in your head, explaining what you meant, justifying who you are. Meanwhile, the person who threw it at you has already moved on. They dumped their psychological trash and walked away clean. You're the one dragging it around like a sacred burden. That's not kindness. That's weakness trained to feel virtuous. Here's the question most people avoid because it cuts too close. Why do you allow people with less discipline, less intelligence, less self-control to define how you feel about yourself? What authority did they earn? What have they built? What have they mastered? In most cases, nothing. And yet their words echo louder in your mind than your own standards. That's not an accident. That's conditioning. Shame is one of the oldest control mechanisms in human history. It doesn't require strength. It doesn't require truth. It only requires one thing: your desire to belong. The herd survives by punishing deviation. The moment you step slightly out of line, ambition, independence, emotional restraint, the group reacts. Not with logic, with labels. Cold, selfish, arrogant, difficult. These words aren't descriptions. They're weapons. Each one is designed to pull you back into alignment, to make you smaller, softer, easier to manage. Imagine a fence made not of steel but of glances and tone shifts. Most people never see it, yet they never step beyond it. Shame is that fence. And here's the part that changes everything once you see it. The moment you react, defend, explain, apologize, you confirm their power. You've told them, without words, that their opinion matters, that they can reach you, that their judgment has weight. You've entered their frame, their courtroom, their game. And in that game, you never win, because they are the prosecutor, the jury, and the law itself. This is why so many people spend their entire lives exhausted. Not from effort, but from constant self-justification. Decades of trying to prove themselves to people who were never qualified to evaluate them in the first place. It's like begging a stranger to grade a test they don't understand, then feeling crushed by the score. The truth is colder, but cleaner. You are only shamed because you still want approval. Shame cannot attach to someone who no longer needs to belong. A man who has cut his dependence on validation is like a shadow. You can throw stones all day, but nothing lands. The insults pass through him, not because he is numb, but because he is sovereign. Think of shame like a hook. It only works if there's something to catch. The need to be liked, the fear of exclusion, the hunger to be seen as good. Once that hook finds nothing, the entire mechanism collapses. This is why every person who has ever done something meaningful was labeled before they were respected. Innovators were called reckless. Leaders were called tyrants. Outliers were called dangerous. The masses always attack what reminds them of their own compromises. Not because they're evil, but because it's easier to pull someone down than to climb up themselves. Picture a bucket of crabs. One tries to escape. The others don't cheer. They drag it back. not out of hatred, but panic. Its escape forces them to confront their own choice to stay. Shame works the same way. When someone tries to shame you, what they're really saying is, "Your refusal to stay small makes my stagnation visible. Please stop." And this is where the shift begins. The moment you see shame not as feedback, but as a power play, it loses its mystique. It becomes obvious, predictable, almost boring. You realize that every attempt to guilt you is a test, a vulnerability audit. They're checking if you still need them, if you still crave acceptance, if you'll bend to keep the peace. Once you understand that, you face a decision, not about them, about you. Are you willing to give up being universally liked in exchange for being untouchable? Are you willing to step out of the herd and accept the silence, the whispers, the discomfort that comes with self-rule? Because you can't be both dependent and free. You can't be sovereign and submissive at the same time. Think of it like this. Approval is a drug. At first it feels good, warm, reassuring. But over time, you need more of it to feel normal. And eventually, you organize your entire life around avoiding withdrawal. You say yes when you mean no. You shrink when you should stand still. You apologize for existing too loudly. And all the while, you call it morality. The exit is not aggression, it's detachment. The decision to stop renting space in your mind to people who contribute nothing to your future. The moment you no longer seek their permission, they lose their leverage. Their words hit the ground like dull knives. You were never meant to belong to everyone. You were meant to belong to yourself. And once you reclaim that, shame has nowhere to land. Hold on to that thought. Because next, we move from understanding the game to breaking it completely. Once you understand why shame works, the next question becomes dangerous. What do you do when it's deployed against you in real time? This is where most people fail. Not because they don't know better, but because instinct takes over. Someone tries to make you feel small and your nervous system lights up. Your mouth opens. Explanations rush forward. You rush to clarify, to soften, to prove that you're not what they just implied. And in doing so, you lose. Defending yourself feels natural. It feels fair. It feels human. But in the psychology of power, defense is surrender disguised as logic. The moment you defend, you accept their premise. You step into their frame. You silently agree that they have the right to judge you and that you owe them a response. From there, you're already on trial. Think of it like this. If someone drags you into quicksand, the instinct is to fight, but fighting is what pulls you under. Power requires the opposite move, stillness. This is where the vacuum response comes in. Not a technique, a posture, a deliberate refusal to feed the attack. Someone throws an insult, a shaming comment, a moral accusation dressed up as concern, and instead of reacting, you stop. You look at them, calm, neutral, no smile, no frown, no explanation, just silence. 4 seconds. 4 seconds sounds insignificant until you try it. In conversation, 4 seconds of silence is an eternity. It breaks rhythm. It collapses momentum. It creates a void where their confidence used to be. Their brain, expecting resistance or apology, suddenly finds nothing. No friction, no emotional payoff. Silence is not empty. Silence is pressure. In that gap, something fascinating happens. The attacker's nervous system begins to panic. Did I go too far? Are they angry? Are they about to explode? Why aren't they responding? The mind hates unanswered questions. It rushes to fill the void, and when it does, it turns inward. Doubt replaces certainty. Confidence fractures. This is the submission reflex. When an expected reaction doesn't arrive, the attacker feels exposed. They showed their hand. They revealed that they care enough to attack you, and you revealed that you don't care enough to respond. That asymmetry is devastating. Most people think power is about verbal dominance. The clever comeback, the sharp retort, the perfectly timed insult. But that's amateur thinking. That's still engagement. True power is making someone realize their attack never mattered. It's not breaking their sword. It's revealing that the sword was made of plastic. After those 4 seconds, you have 2 options. Both are lethal. Neither requires aggression. The first is withdrawal. You turn away. You continue what you were doing. You remove your attention as if they ceased to exist. No announcement, no drama, just absence. This is the nuclear option because attention is the currency of social power. When you withdraw it, you bankrupt the interaction. I've watched this happen in real rooms. Someone throws a jab in public, expecting laughter or tension. The target pauses, looks at them briefly, then walks away mid-sentence. The room feels it immediately. The attacker is left standing there, exposed, holding nothing. Everyone understands what just happened without a word being spoken. That person never tries again. The second option is even colder. You respond, but not to the attack. You change the subject entirely. You treat their words as irrelevant noise. They call you selfish. You pause, look at them, then ask someone else about a project deadline. Or you ask them a neutral logistical question. You've just communicated something brutal. Your opinion of me isn't even important enough to address. Both options do the same thing. They deny the attacker the frame. They refuse to validate the premise. You don't win the argument. You delete their confidence in having arguments with you at all. Here's the deeper truth. Most people don't insult you because they're strong. They insult you because they're uncertain. They're probing, testing, looking for a reaction that confirms their position. When they find none, the behavior collapses. Attacking you becomes uncomfortable, risky, unrewarding. After you handle a situation like this once or twice, something shifts. People stop testing you, not because you intimidated them, but because you made disrespect inefficient. Attacking you produces silence, not stimulation. And humans abandon behaviors that don't pay off. Notice what you didn't do. You didn't raise your voice. You didn't explain yourself. You didn't prove anything. You didn't lose control. You stayed centered. That's what the room reads as power. Calm is credibility. Silence is often misunderstood as weakness because most people use it unconsciously. They go quiet out of fear. But intentional silence is the opposite. It's a signal that says, I don't need to participate in this to remain intact. Think of a black hole. It doesn't chase. It doesn't argue. It doesn't assert. It simply exists with such gravity that everything else adjusts around it. That's the vacuum response. You don't push back. You pull the entire interaction into stillness. This is not about being passive. It's about refusing to give your energy to people who are trying to siphon it. Every insult is an invitation. The vacuum response is how you decline. And once you understand this, you stop fearing confrontation because you realize you don't have to fight. You just have to stand still long enough for their attack to collapse under its own weight. Next, we go further. Because sometimes silence alone isn't enough. Sometimes you need to flip the entire frame and make the attack work against the attacker. Silence dismantles most attacks. But there are moments when someone persists. They don't back off. They circle. They need a reaction the way an addict needs a hit. In those moments, stillness alone isn't enough. You don't retreat. You reverse the gravity of the situation. This is where the frame flips, and once it flips, it never flips back. Here is the move almost no one has the nerve to use, because it requires something deeper than confidence. It requires ownership. When someone shames you, calls you cold, selfish, arrogant, ruthless, they expect resistance. They want denial. They want you to scramble to explain why you're not that person. That struggle is where their power comes from. So instead of denying the label, you accept it, calmly, cleanly, without irony. You're cold. You pause. You nod. Yes, you're selfish. Correct. You're ruthless. Absolutely. Then you add two words that collapse the entire structure of the attack. Now what? That's it. Those two words are not a challenge. They're not sarcasm. They're a declaration that the accusation has no leverage. And in that moment, something strange happens in the attacker's mind. The script breaks. They prepared for conflict, not consent. They expected you to bleed, not to stand there untouched. An insult only functions as a weapon if the target rejects it. The moment you own it, the weapon shatters. Shame requires resistance. Without resistance, it has nowhere to attach. Think about it. If someone calls you selfish and you spend 10 minutes explaining why you're actually generous, you've just told them their judgment matters. You've confirmed that selfish is a label you fear. But if you say, "Yes, I put myself first," the conversation dies. There's nothing left to press on. They can't shame what you don't hide. They can't control what you openly claim. This is the core of frame reversal. You don't argue inside their narrative. You step outside it and rewrite the meaning entirely. What they intended as a flaw, you present as a feature. Arrogant? Maybe. But I'd rather be arrogant and effective than humble and invisible. Notice what happened. You didn't defend. You didn't explain. You reframed. You took their word and elevated it. Suddenly, they're not the moral authority anymore. They're just someone expressing discomfort. Frame reversal works because it exposes the real motive behind the attack. It was never about truth. It was about control. And once control is gone, the attacker is left standing naked in their intention. But you're not finished yet. After you own the label and say, "Now what?" you deliver the question. Not an insult. A mirror. Does judging me make you feel better? Are you trying to convince me or yourself? Is my life really that interesting to you? These questions don't offend you. They interrogate the motive behind the attack. They force the other person to confront why they spoke up in the first place. And most people are not prepared for that level of self-exposure. Watch what happens next. They stumble. They backtrack. "I was just joking. I was just trying to help. You're too sensitive." Those responses are tells. They reveal retreat. The moment someone reframes their attack as humor or concern, the battle is over. They lost the frame. You didn't raise your voice. You didn't insult them. You simply made them conscious of themselves. The key is delivery. Absolute calm. No edge. No heat. Curiosity, not aggression. If you ask the question with anger, you lose. Anger signals investment. Calm signals superiority. The one who stays emotionally neutral controls the interaction. Imagine a family dinner. Someone tries to put you back in your place. You think you're better than everyone now. Most people rush to deny it. No, I'm just trying to improve myself. Instead, you pause. Different, yes. Then, does that bother you? Silence. You didn't accuse. You didn't justify. You held up a mirror. And in that mirror, they saw their own insecurity staring back. This is why frame reversal is so powerful. It doesn't attack the person. It attacks the mechanism. It turns their attempted dominance into self-exposure. And once someone associates shaming you with personal discomfort, they stop trying. Over time, something else happens. Your reputation changes. People warn each other about you. Careful, that won't work on them. They'll turn it back on you. It's not worth it. That's not fear. That's respect. You didn't become loud. You didn't become cruel. You became unmanageable. And unmanageable people are not bullied. They're avoided or deferred to. Here's the paradox most people never grasp. The more you stop defending yourself, the fewer attacks you receive. Not because the world became kinder, but because you removed the incentive. You taught others that disrespect produces no reward. And once you internalize this, you stop seeing insults as threats. You see them as information, signals of insecurity, evidence that something about your presence disrupted someone else's internal order. At that point, shame becomes almost useful. It tells you exactly who is beneath you psychologically. Next, we move past tactics entirely, because silence and frame reversal are tools. But tools alone don't make you untouchable. Identity does. Up to this point, everything you've learned has been tactical. Silence, ownership, frame reversal. These are weapons, and they work. But weapons in the hands of the wrong identity eventually fail. Because if, deep down, you still see yourself as a good person, trying to prove you are good, shame will always find a way in. To become truly untouchable, something more fundamental has to change. Not what you do, who you are. The identity of the good person is the most effective cage ever built. It looks noble. It sounds moral. But its real function is control. A good person is predictable. A good person can be guilted. A good person can be manipulated through obligation. And once you adopt that identity, you spend your life defending it. Think about why certain words still sting. Selfish, cold, arrogant. Why do they hurt? Not because they're true or false, but because you were trained to see them as sins. From a young age, you were taught that good people sacrifice. They accommodate. They compromise. They put others first. And anyone who doesn't is framed as flawed. Ask yourself who benefits from that belief. Parents benefit because obedient children are easier to manage. Teachers benefit because compliant students don't challenge authority. Friends benefit because generous people are easy to lean on. Partners benefit because accommodating people are easy to control. Entire systems benefit from individuals who feel guilty for prioritizing themselves. The label good was never a compliment. It was a leash. Once you see this, a pattern emerges. Every time someone shamed you, they wanted something. Your time, your energy, your agreement, your silence, your resources. And when you resisted, they wrapped their demand in moral language. If you cared, you would. If you were a good person, you'd help. If you weren't so selfish. That's not morality. That's manipulation. The moral high ground is almost always theater. People don't shame you because they care about ethics. They shame you because they want leverage. And morality is the cleanest camouflage for control, because it makes you doubt yourself while making them look righteous. This is where the identity shift begins. You stop asking, "Am I being good?" and start asking, "Am I being effective?" You stop measuring yourself by approval and start measuring yourself by outcomes. Not outcomes for everyone. Outcomes for your life. This doesn't mean becoming cruel. It means becoming selective. It means understanding that empathy without boundaries is self-destruction. It means realizing that being endlessly accommodating doesn't make you virtuous, it makes you available. And availability without scarcity breeds contempt. Here's the uncomfortable truth. People respect competence far more than kindness. Kindness is expected. Competence is rare. When you deliver results, build things, solve problems, create value, your position changes. Your words carry weight. Your silence carries even more. This is why competence is non-negotiable. All the psychological strategies in the world won't save you if you're hollow. If you can't back your presence with substance, you deserve to be challenged. Real power is not pretending you're above criticism. It's being so capable that irrelevant criticism doesn't matter. When you are genuinely good at what you do, something shifts internally. You no longer need to convince anyone. You know, your confidence becomes quiet, grounded, unshakable. And from that place, you earn the right to be indifferent. Indifference is misunderstood. It's not apathy, it's hierarchy. You care deeply about the opinions of people who are where you want to be. Everyone else is noise. When a critic hasn't built what you're building, their words are informational at best, irrelevant at worst. Combine high competence with zero empathy for critics, and you become immune. Too solid to be dismissed. Too detached to be manipulated. Imagine walking into a room. Someone tries to embarrass you. A comment about your choices, your appearance, your ambition. The room pauses, waiting for your reaction, and you give none. No tightening of the jaw, no forced laugh, no defense, just stillness. Then you continue the conversation as if nothing happened. Everyone feels it. Status shifts without announcement. The attacker shrinks, not because you attacked back, but because you didn't acknowledge their attempt at dominance. You refuse to register it as significant. Later, someone asks, "Didn't that bother you?" And you realize something unsettling. It didn't. Not because you're numb, but because your identity no longer depends on being seen as good. This is the untouchable identity. You are no longer auditioning for approval. You are not trying to be liked. You are not explaining your boundaries. You are executing your life. Respect doesn't come from warmth. It comes from clarity, from consistency, from competence paired with self-respect. People may not always like you, but they will think twice before crossing you. And that's the trade most powerful people accept without hesitation. Once you stop defending your goodness, you become dangerous in the only way that matters, impossible to control. There is one final step left. Because identity without action is just another fantasy. And in the end, none of this matters unless you live it. Everything you've heard up to now means nothing if it stays theoretical. Knowledge without application is just another form of entertainment. And entertainment has never made anyone powerful. Power comes from repetition under pressure, from choosing differently in the moment your instincts beg you to react. So here is the line you cross for the final time. The next time someone tries to shame you, you will not defend yourself. You will not explain. You will not apologize for your ambition, your distance, your priorities, or your refusal to shrink. You will remember exactly what shame is. A demand for your submission disguised as morality, and you will decline. You'll feel the familiar pull at first. The urge to clarify, to soften, to prove you're not a bad person. That urge is the last echo of the old identity fighting for survival. Let it pass. Let the silence stretch. Let the vacuum form. Watch how quickly the other person grows uncomfortable when you don't play your assigned role. Then, if needed, you'll own whatever they accuse you of. Not because it's true, but because you no longer need to reject it. You'll say yes without flinching. And when the moment is right, you'll ask the question that exposes everything they tried to hide. Calmly, almost gently, like you're curious, not offended. And then you'll walk away. This is where real freedom begins. Not the freedom to say whatever you want, but the freedom to not respond at all. The freedom to conserve your energy for battles that actually matter. The freedom to stop bleeding attention into people who only show up to extract it. Understand this deeply. People can only shame you if you agree to feel ashamed. They can only make you feel small if you consent to shrinking. They can only control you if you hand them the controls. Every insult is a request. Every guilt trip is an invitation. Every moral accusation is a hook. And from this point forward, you stop biting. This isn't about cruelty. It's about hygiene. Mental hygiene. Emotional hygiene. Strategic hygiene. You don't argue with parasites. You remove access. You don't wrestle with mediocrity. You rise above it and let gravity do the rest. The right people will feel your shift immediately. They'll respect your boundaries without being told. They won't test you with shame because they don't need leverage to connect with you. And the wrong people? They'll grow louder for a moment. Accusations will intensify. Labels will escalate. That's the withdrawal phase. That's them realizing the old tools no longer work. Let them panic. The same voices that shame you now will praise you later. Once there's something to gain from your success, they'll rewrite history. They'll say they always believed in you. They were just being honest. They were trying to help. Remember who they were when you were building. Remember who tried to keep you small. And don't confuse opportunism with loyalty. You're not here to be universally accepted. You're here to be effective. To build something real. To live on your own terms. To answer to your standards, not the emotional demands of people who never risked anything. Power doesn't come from being liked. It comes from being respected. And respect is built from competence, boundaries, and the refusal to explain yourself to those who haven't earned that access. So here is your final directive. When someone tries to shame you, don't get angry. Get superior. Not through insults. Not through dominance displays. Through calm. Through silence. Through indifference backed by real capability. Be cold when warmth is used to manipulate you. Be distant when closeness is used to control you. Be silent when words would only give them what they want. Outgrow people quietly. Let your absence do the talking. Let your results answer questions you no longer entertain. Build yourself into someone they can't reach. Someone they can't guilt. Someone they can only observe from a distance and talk about after the fact. They can't break what they can't touch. They can't shame what doesn't seek approval. And they can't control what no longer needs them. From this moment on, you don't react. You calculate. You conserve. You rise. Be untouchable. This is where it settles in. Not as motivation, not as hype, but as a quiet, irreversible shift. You don't walk away from this trying to remember techniques. You walk away different. Because once you truly understand how shame works, you can never unsee it. The spell is broken. From now on, every time someone tries to pull you down with words, you'll recognize the pattern instantly. You'll see the insecurity behind the accusation, the fear behind the judgment, the need behind the morality. And instead of reacting, you'll pause. You'll feel your center. You'll remember who you answer to now. Your life will get quieter, fewer arguments, fewer explanations, fewer emotional storms that never really belonged to you in the first place. And in that quiet, something rare begins to form. Authority. Not the loud kind. The kind that doesn't announce itself. the kind people feel before they understand. Some will drift away. Let them. They were only connected to the version of you that could be controlled. Others will adjust. They'll treat you differently, more carefully, more respectfully, without knowing exactly why. That's the cost of self-rule, and it's worth paying. You are no longer here to be understood by everyone. You are here to be aligned with yourself. You are no longer negotiating your worth. You are no longer explaining your boundaries. You are no longer apologizing for choosing growth over comfort. Remember this: power is not loud. Power is not cruel. Power is calm, selective, and unmoved. It doesn't chase approval. It doesn't defend against noise. It doesn't react on command. So move forward with precision. Speak less. Observe more. Act when it matters. Withdraw when it strengthens you. And when shame comes knocking, as it always does when someone senses your rise, don't fight it. Let it starve. Because the moment you stop feeding shame, you stop feeding the very system that kept you small. And from that moment on, you are no longer reachable.